Hello students, we are on 4-7. We're going to multiply with decimals in this lesson, and I'm going to show you shifts with the decimals. Before we were looking at in 4-1, we were looking at shifts with the numbers. Now let's take a look and see what the decimal does, okay? So in the problem that is on page 135 of your fat cheetah, so turn to that page if you're not there, we have a kid named Leon, and he's earning $213 a month. And we want to know what will happen if Leon saves 1/10 of his earnings. If he saves 1/10 of this, how much would that be? Well, we know that of means multiply, okay? And I would multiply this and this. But just like tens, when I have a decimal, tenth, my numbers will shift and get smaller, okay? So if I'm saving 1/10, I have one spot, one place value, so I'm gonna move all of my numbers over one place value. So the 2 would go here, the 1 would go here, and the 3, I'm gonna put a 0 so that looks like a number, a money number we would read. If he's saving 1/10 of his earnings, that is $21.30. The digits shifted to the right. And what happened to each number? The 2 that used to be worth 200, if he's saving 1/10, it is now worth 20. It's in the tens place. It went down 1/10. And this 1 that's in the tens place is now worth just 1. Okay, this used to be 10 and now it's 1. The 3 is now 3/10. It shifted this way, becoming a little bit smaller. Now if he's going to do 1/100th, so that looks like 1/10, and this would look like 1/100th. If he's going to do 1/100th, there is 2 place values after the decimal, so I would move my original number 2 places over. So then instead of the 2 being by the hundreds, it would be 2 places over in the ones place. And instead of the 1 being in the tens, it would be 2 places over into the tenths place. And the 3 that's worth 1 whole number, would go 2 places to the thousandths place. So if he was going to save 1/100th of his earnings, he would save $2.13 a month. Let's take a look at a few more problems. 24 times 1, pretty easy. That's 24. 24 times 1/10, okay? I'm gonna write my number 24 down, and I'm going to see how many decimal places this is from the back, okay? There's 1 decimal place, one space before the decimal, so I'm gonna come in from the back and put 1 in, okay? Again, I'm gonna write my number down for 24 times 1/100th, and I'm looking at the back end, and I count how many how many spots it takes to get to the decimal, or how many spots it takes to get to the end, which is 2. So I'm gonna come in from the back and go 1, 2. And I'll add a 0 to make that look nicer. So if you notice, the decimal here, if you don't see the decimal, it's at the end, and it moved 1 spot for the 10th, 2 spots for 100th. Same thing with here. I'm gonna write my number, 689, because 689 times 1 is itself. Then I'm gonna write the number again. And there's 1 decimal space, so I'm gonna do 1 from the back. See, 1 here, so 1 here. It's 89.6. It went from here to 1 space over on that side of the 9. And then if it's 100th, I'm gonna write my number again. There's 2 spots from the back to reach the decimal, so I'm going to do 2 here. 1, 2. So that's $6 or 6.89. So you notice the decimal shifting to the left. The number, as you multiply by a decimal that's smaller, the answer becomes smaller. Okay, let's take a look when we have 2 decimals that we're multiplying, okay? In this case, I have 1/10 times 4/10. So what I'm saying is, what is 1/10 of 4/10? And I would think about how many spots, how many decimal spots I have. So So from here to the back, that's 1. And there's another one, which makes a total of 2. I know that 1 times 4 is 4. And I'm going to move from the back 2 spots. 1, 2. My decimal would go there, and I would fill in the zeros. Okay, so the answer would be 4 hundredths. And if I'm thinking about a tenth and cutting it up, what is 1/10 of 4 tenths? It is 4 hundredths. Same thing here. What is 1/10 of 4 hundredths now? Well, I have 1 decimal spot here, 2 here, so a total of 3. I know that 1 times 4 is 4, and I will come in from the back and do 1, 2, 3. Move my decimal place times 3 over. 1, 2, 3. I'd fill in those holes, those gaps, and it would be 4,000. Now, if I had one whole number, again, nothing really changes. There's no decimal here, but there's 2 decimal spots here. 1 times 4 is 4, and I'm going to do 2 decimal moves and fill in my zeros. Okay, so that would be 4/10. Notice the decimal, there was 2 decimal spots here in both the terms. In here, there was only 2 decimal spots in this one term and not this term, but the answer's still the same, okay? Because you're looking at how many times the decimal, how many place values there is after the decimal. So we've got 2 here and 1 here for a total of 3, which means even though this problem looks different, the answer will probably be the same, because I'm going to come in 1, 2, 3, fill in my zeros, and it is the same, okay? So you're counting how many decimal places there is and then adding that into your answer. Okay, let's take a look at this a different way. If you have 2/10 times 4/10, you can take your 2/10 and break it up and think that that's like 2 times 1/10. Then I can take my whole number out and multiply both my fractions. And again, I can multiply however I want to. So I'm going to take my 2 decimal numbers and multiply those together first. And I know that when I multiply decimals, I'm looking at how many decimal spaces there are. 1, 2. So I know that that's 4. And then I'm going to come in and do 2 decimal, put in 2 decimal spots like that. And then multiply that by 2, okay? And 2 times 4 is 8. Again, there's 2 decimal spots, so I'm going to do 2 just like that. And my answer would be 8 hundredths for this, if you wanted to break it up. You can also just say 4 times 2, that equals 8. 1 decimal move here, 1 decimal place there. That gives me 2, come in from the back, 1, 2. So I get the same answer, okay? Just a different way of thinking about it. Let's take a look at a few more problems for practice, okay? I'm going to take a look at this, and I see 3/10 times 4/10. I'm going to remove the tenths and just multiply 4 times 3. I know that that's 12. Then I'm going to come in and see how many place values there are from the decimal. 1 over there and 1 over there, which makes a total of 2. So I'm going to come in from the back and go 1, 2. Add my decimal and put a 0 there to make it look a little bit nicer, okay? Again, same thing. Going to think about my 3/10 and my 4 hundredths, take out the 10th and the 100th, and just go 4 times 3, 12. Now come in and see how many how many place values there are. 1 over here, 2 over here, so that gives me a total of 3. So I'm going to come 1, 2, so 1, 2, 3. I'm going to have to add a 0 there as a placeholder, and a 0 there in front to make it look nice. Here, I have 3/10 and 1 and 3/10. So again, I'm going to take out the decimals. I see 3 and 13. So 3 times 13 is 39. Now I'm going to see how many decimal spots there, how many place values there are. 1, 2. So I'm going to make 2, 1, 2. 39 hundredths would be my answer to this. And that makes sense because I have a fraction or a decimal, something less than 1, multiplied by 1. That will give me an answer less than this term, but more than this term, which checks out. Same thing with this. I have 2 tenths times 26 hundredths. I'm just gonna take out the tenths and the hundredths, like I did in the problem before, and say 2 times 26, that's 52. And I would have 2 place values here, 1 there, so the total of 3, 1, 2, 3. So 52 thousandths would be my answer for that one. Why don't you try in your book on Factcheetah pages 135 to 140, try a few of those problems.